Thanks everyone for joining today. We'll discuss an important topic, as I see, which is private 4G and 5G network security. So I'm not sure about everyone's, let's say, understanding on this subject. So maybe I may sound, let's say, too shallow sometimes, or for some of you. I try to get the best out of it. It was one of the, let's say, hot topics once again in Mobile World Congress. Mainly because of, let's say, recent use cases, right? Everyone is looking for use cases for 5G, and this is clearly one of those. So my objectives today, if I manage to, is to give an idea of the global scenario. So the reason why, which are the drivers, use cases, which are the players. I'm not really going too deep in the players part because we have another webinar coming that will be, let's say, more focusing on let's say clouds, telco clouds, and then we'll discuss this a little more further. But again, this is not a single way of doing things. There's not one type of private networks. We'll discuss a little bit of the models, who owns this business according to the model, because it depends on the country, it depends on the regulators in your country, etc. So why we're doing that and why we're discussing 4G in 2022? Well, it's relevant for private networks, as I see. So we'll go through 5G core characteristics, why we're talking a lot about private 5G, which are the differentials you get on the industrial and commercial campuses, which are the features that came built in with 5G, and what else must be secured. About a little bit about security process. So enterprises use it to Wi-Fi, use it to have Ethernet cabling, etc. So this is full IT and follows, let's say, an IT mindset. When you look for implementing telco appliances, telco technology, this is operation technology. This is not the same. There is some complexity, some difference on how people act and how companies build for it. And also, those solutions are much flexible, and you better take care about the scaling it provides. Maybe not on an enterprise level, but on a provider level. Let's go through it. So first question I usually get is why I'll be deploying a private 5G network. Why don't I just use Wi-Fi, right? And as a matter of fact, if you have just joined it, or if I forgot for any reason to say that, please send your questions to the chat. I try to answer those as through the presentation when applicable, or at the end if I'm not able to. Thank you so much. So again, why I'll be doing 5G and not Wi-Fi? Yes, 5G it assures a lower latency than Wi-Fi. That's very necessary, especially for industrial use case, where you have control systems. You cannot cope with a huge delay of a variable delay, let's say a jitter in the network. And once again, another thing that 5G brings that not even Wi-Fi 6 got is higher densities. So it's the usual experience when you are in a place which is sustained by Wi-Fi. The quality of service varies a lot from time to time, depending on a huge meeting at some floor, etc., the number of occupants and their distribution, right? And also about reliability, because what we face when you get Wi-Fi in the office space or industry space is that critical equipment are cabled, are not on Wi-Fi. So we're not solving every issue. We're not addressing every client on the network. So when you look at it, where you'll be using that, industrial plants, when you need some mobility or some outdoor coverage. So when I talk mobility, it's not that you're going across the world or across a town. Maybe you're just moving across in industry campus, or you're moving across a mine. So a lot of use case for 5G on mining nowadays. I see a lot of new deployments as well. And this requires mobility. So huge machines moving around. On agro, also agricultural plants, you have huge machinery moving around, guided by GPS, controlled remotely, etc. Also, when you look enterprise, you have high demand campuses, and you have these mission critical endpoints that you usually don't connect to Wi-Fi. So you are not likely to see a conference room. If you remember the days we used conference rooms a lot, usually they are all cable. They don't use the provided Wi-Fi. Your SOC or your NOC, your operation center, the one that deals with real-time alarms, they are not also connected to Wi-Fi. They're all cabled. The security cameras, everything that is, let's say, crucial, mission critical, is cabled. So this already tells you which are the limitations of Wi-Fi, and those could be, let's say, solved better by 5G, because I could allocate resource and I could ensure that no matter the number of users I have connected on my campus on 5G, some of them are assured a better quality of service. And again, they have to provide the rationale for 4G, right? Why, if I have this 5G miracle maker, all brand new technology, why should I be doing 4G instead? First of all, is established solution. So it's easier to get 5G in a box, like a monolithic solution to support an event. For instance, you can get to a show or whatever and provide the network in no time. Just plug it to the next power source and just put the antennas where they must be, and you have a good 4G coverage in a box. And if you're looking on the other way and you pretend to use in the structure of an MNO or mobile network operator, it's usual that the 4G network has a bigger coverage nowadays. Like you have 5G in capitals, you have 5G in a lot of places, but not all countries have 5G on the roads yet, on the countryside. So if you're using a private network, which is provided by an operator, and we'll get to that in a few slides more, and you need coverage more than really throughput or any other requirements specific to 5G, why not going 4G? So why we see 5G being used? Like I see security, police networks. So we have a protest somewhere. You see there's a police truck that brings a 4G network they use that doesn't rely on public networks. Why so? It's not that they don't trust the 4G on public networks. It's because public networks may be exhausted by this kind of events. If you have an IoT, have a massive deployment, and you are giving IoT across full cities, okay, 4G modems, 4G technology on the client side. If it's 10 cents less, and usually it's much more than 10 cents less per endpoint, you're saving a lot of money if you don't have the 5G requirements. So it's about that. So there are some requirements, some use cases that fit better in a 4G private network. But again, what happened with the 5G? Let me just happened with the 5G? What has it brought on security? So first of all, 5G gets rid of transparent client data on the radio interface. So it's the first generation when you can really keep this to be exchanged, where someone could just eavesdrop it. Also, you can encrypt the backhaul links. Okay, this is a lot of technical, but again, you can encrypt the links that connect the antennas to the central office or to the central equipment, right? So you can assure that no one is eavesdropping those links. Another thing is that you can slice your network. You can just split your network according to the client's requirements. So if you buy on 3G or on 4G, if you buy some virtual network inside your local operator, you can have you have a separate ranges, you have a lot of security barriers, but in the end of the day, your data is being dealt with by the same equipment that's dealing with public data, with the guys that are using the mobile phones on the same network. The first time you can really separate, segregate the machines, the virtual machines, whatever, that are dealing with your data is on 5G. And you're able to encrypt signaling. So signaling has been, let's say, a weak point forever in telecom. And now you can just encrypt it so no one can look into it and also tamper with it in the middle of the transport. Again, I do a remark that the encryption on backhaul is not new. It could be done already on 4G. So if your requirement is just about that, then 4G is is safe enough, let's say, for you. So which are the caveats we find it? And this is a really short list of it. I just told you you can encrypt the signaling. And again, because of, let's say, service requirements, service quality assurance, we see a lot of operators are not implementing encryption so far. So you should consider implementing that. And if you're doing your private network from the ground, you should do that for sure. We notice from our research that although you can separate, when you separate the control plane and user plane, let's say you separate the brains from the transport network, from the huge throughputs, it's how you get to the low latency, is how you get to a big throughput for the corporate subscriber, for the industry. But again, this opens another border you should take care of. So it uses the protocol PFCP, which is based on GTP, and you should protect it. You should assure that no one will have access to those interfaces, and the elements you use are resilient to tampering. Again, another improvement that's not being too much enforced is that the authentication of the network functions. So 5G brings virtualization, so everything runs on a cloud level, and you have network functions, and you have a lot of communication between those. So in order to participate in this communication, in this common bus, let's say, of communication, the entity should be authenticated, and there are elements built in. I'm not naming them here, but the NRF mainly built in to do so and to transport this kind of authentication, etc. And this should be used, and this should be enforced to the best method available. Other than that, if you're failing to do the three first steps, everything else is trust-based. So trust me when I tell you, telco is made to work. It's not made for security. It's made for availability, which is one of the, let's say, one of the pillars on security, but not the only one. So if you want to have really a safe network, you must pay attention to the three first, because if someone surpasses those, then they are in. They can just turn your network down. They can eavesdrop on any subscriber. They can do a lot of things, because once you pass it through signal encryption, you are connected to the PFCP interface, such as let's say the interface between your UPF, your let's say barrier of traffic, and the control plane. You just can manipulate a lot of things, right? And unless you are happy to be on an isolated networks, you must also control your APIs. So you have functions such as NEF that exposes APIs, so you can connect between networks. And all of those, as usually in telco, they're standards. But not even talking today about Open RAN. We'll be touching this subject on a coming webinar. But again, you must be aware that where is an API, it must be monitored. The access must be controlled, authenticated, etc. So should we just firewall it? And there's always a yes and no, because you must first of all understand your network, understand which is your case, and which are your let's say, borders and integrations to really do a huge assessment on what you should do. So that brings me to the types of private networks, or as as some norms tell it, non-public networks. Okay, so you'll find a lot of NPNs. I call it private network, but since PN was already taken for public networks, we're going NPN now, non-public. So when you look at this diagram, this is provided by Ericsson, like as a model they provide. You see that you can go to a total slice using fully an operator network on T1, or you can have on the right side a non-public network. You have all your equipment on site. This is the by the book non-public network. But that's a cloudy space between T1 and T6, right? You can buy your private network using fully a mobile network operator. So it's like an MVNO. The difference is that you can just ask and enforce by contract that you have dedicated instance of equipment dealing with your traffic. So we are really separated, segregated in equipment level from other traffics. And there's a blur between that and what I call cloud NPN. So we have, you see AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, they all have their solutions now for your private network, for your private 4G and 5G network. Also, Rakuten Symphony is providing this kind of solution coming from another space. So Rakuten came from being an operator to being a service provider. Those guys are coming from being service providers on the cloud to being telco service providers, right? Either by buying solutions themselves or partnering up. So you see Google Cloud, they are partnering up with traditional telco vendors. When you look at Microsoft, they did what they do best. They bought solutions. So Azure has bought has building solutions inside that are Microsoft owned. So that may be competitive on pricing when you own the end-to-end solution. But again, I'm looking at those not as a market vision, but as a security vision. So we must understand at which kind of network you are. So if you are using only the local RAN, like a T2, so we install some antennas and connect everything else to the cloud. You can be a T3, so you need low latency and you are not co-located with AWS or with Azure, let's say. And you need to provide, you want your data to remain local. Let's say you are a mining company, you don't want your competition to be able to touch your data in the cloud at some day. So there are a lot of possibilities of how much equipment you bring to your enterprise, and that will bring you between T3, 4, and 5. If you don't have an MNO or don't want to rely on MNO, then it's T6 for you. You're running a full standalone network. And okay, why doesn't everyone do that? There are many, let's say, advantages and disadvantages of doing so. So if I'm not worried about coverage, I'm just covering a building, maybe an NPN is enough, right? But what I'm responsible when I'm looking at it. So on the first model, the one that's based on public network, and the enterprise has just to manage the endpoint, right? And the service provider, in this case, the MNO, they provide all the infrastructure, they care about availability, security lifecycle, activating those endpoints, etc. So about Spectrum. Spectrum is paid for this option. You don't need to care about Spectrum because the mobile network operator bought it in advance. So there are some countries that this is the only possibility. So you see, I'm not naming those, but you see in Europe, there are some cases that government is not auctioning frequencies for enterprise, and also not allowing enterprise to use shared frequencies. So in that case, that's the only possibility you have. And your security is 100% on the mobile operator. But again, the enterprise due diligence is to assure that this operator is caring about security and have enough security measures in place. So you cannot fully delegate security to someone, never. And when you look at NPN as a service, you are responsible, the company, the enterprise is responsible for endpoints and all the collocated equipment. So you put an EPC inside, you're responsible for this EPC. If you don't, you're responsible only for the RAM part, for the antennas. Usually, the service provider manages the core functions, most of the RAN control, right? This is one of the good parts of coming across and coming to the open RAN world, right? When you're moving that way. And this may not be the best fit if you get an isolated plant or a big plant. The vendors are usually focus these kinds of solution on smaller business, medium business. Security shared. So depending on how much you're paying to be on the cloud, how much you're keeping on site, okay? But again, if you're doing that, you're depending on the cloud and on the connectivity to that cloud. So this must be considered a major asset on your security to be evaluated as well as in availability and also about confidentiality. If you're handling that as a fully isolated network, you just have everything inside the enterprise side. Service provider is about delivering software, hardware, and support, and security is 100% on enterprise. But that brings me to a lot of good questions, and I'm not giving answers. I'm good at questions. I'm much better at questions than that. But enterprise should be asking, how do I activate a new equipment? How do I enroll it? How do I keep it safe? How safe are the eSIM, the EUICC, or the SIM card, EUICC cards I'm receiving, right? It's possible that someone do a SIM swap on my company and starts to connect straight into my company if I'm using an MNO. And on the MNO side, right? How can I prove that this is not the case? How do I protect the network when I'm connecting companies to my network? And sometimes this kind of integration is deep, right? So through APIs and etc. And MNO is not talking to a single enterprise customer. So you figure out the complexity of it. That's the scale I'm talking about when I started this presentation. When I'm contracting, I'm hiring an NPN as a service. So you have to take care of how safe your radio network is, because the cloud provider won't be looking at it, won't be present at your site, which is your resilience, how you react to this kind of issue if you have some interference on the radio network. And again, how you activate those endpoints remains an issue, right? On the service provider side, how can I connect that many enterprise weaves dropped in the middle of this path to the cloud, and how to keep it all split, how segregated, right? Should I have a separate function for each enterprise customer? Is that viable? How that figures out as a business model. NPN, yes, if you buy the full network, you have to ask all questions. And also another one on the enterprise side. Do I have a good enough SLA to cover for my outage? How long I want to rely on a network which is not functioning? So is it about minutes, hours, a day, whatever? And on the service provider, how can I keep this SLA, right? So yes, we are a security company. We have our own visions on that. So that's what I would like to share. I'm not sure if I'm receiving any questions so far. Maybe the chat's working or not. So I would kindly ask if someone can try to send me a question, because we are getting to this part of the meeting. Just ask me about the weather if so. Thank you. So we are at SecurityGen. We understand that there are 3 steps to make your network better, right? You must be able to inspect, to be able to have visibility on which are the risks that you are open to at any time. you need to protect your network, right? You need to be aware of threats. Yeah. Okay. You need to be, let's say, good enough and be following the best practices. And also, you need to be able to detect any failures on that protection layer. So it's not that I put a firewall and I'm happy because I defined the rules and they be as good as the first day as in the 2 years from now. So I should monitor that, right? So we have our own solutions. I'll pass through them briefly. So we have ACE for inspection. We have TSG firewall module for protection and the IDS intrusive detection module for detection or for monitoring that. And other than that, also for forensics later on. Because, okay, you can tell your regulator as an operator or as a service provider, you can tell anyone that, okay, I have a firewall in place, so I'm safe. But the firewall wants to provide you of evidence that no one has breached it by definition. So monitoring is the key on that part. So what we are bringing this year to the market is ACE, which is a software solution. It can run on a virtual machine. It usually runs on our private cloud and connected to the roaming network or straight to your network, depending on the case. It can check for 5G, 4G, 3G, GPRS vulnerabilities, right? And can report it to the security department of the responsible part of that element, either the MNO or the enterprise, or even the hyperscaler, which is selling the solution as a cloud solution. So the idea is that we have a BAS, which is not a new tool if you're talking about an IT environment, so it's breach and attack simulation. The differential is that the first one for telco. So it goes to telecommunication, let's say native interface and try to check them for any vulnerabilities. And it's not a vulnerability scanner. So after it finds a breach, it will try to attack the breach and see to what extent you are exposed. So we're using a huge knowledge base. So though we are a new company, we rely on very experienced experts from the market. So we have a lot of let's say knowledge base material that's being transferred to this product. And again, it's a way you can make an external check on your telecommunication assets. So it's about inspection. It's about configuring the tests you want to do, so you can check for denial of service if that's what you worries you most. Subscriber data interception, fraud, information disclosure of any times about any type about subscriber or network, whatever. If any SMS, any data is being intercepted or may be intercepted, that's the case. And at the end of the day, it generates a report for every test. And also can be dynamic integrated with your CM, if you're SOAR. So if there's, if you tell me that a DOS possibility is unacceptable, so whenever this kind of test is ran, it will send an event straight to your CM to be routed to the right team to solve it. So about protection and detection, I'm showing them together here. So those are two models, the firewall model and the IDS model for TSG. So in one hand, you detect which are the real attacks coming inside your network. And on the other hand, on the red side, you look on blocking those. So blocking those is much relevant, and monitoring those is as relevant as it. So it's a next-gen firewall as defined by, for instance, many, let's say, public organizations. You don't have a full solution if you're not checking and monitoring the effectiveness of the firewall. And of course, it generates a report that can be compared to what's being tested by ACE. So one thing is actively testing. The other thing is seeing what's coming from the network. So the idea is, again, to have active protection to really block attacks on signaling and other interfaces, provide visibility so you see what's happening on the network. Sometimes we find, let's say, service issues while looking at security because someone is misrouting some part of the signaling. So no matter this is valid signaling, it's passing through public networks as it shouldn't be. And again, when you have this both, let's say, visibility and protection together, you just can go for an integrated vision, and you can just create rules that from the traffic, from the manufacturer traffic you detect on the IDS, you can do a one-click rule and create a rule for it on the firewall. You can correlate what you have seen on the IDS as attack attempts and firewall events to see the amount of success you are getting on the firewall on blocking them or on other parts of the network. No matter if they are not being successful, you can just transfer this burden to the firewall in that case. And again, that's the way to have a policy, a security policy monitored and accounted for. So this is how we see it, how you should protect your network. Of course, where to insert it depends much on the kind of network which we have discussed today, and depends also a lot on how you, let's say, you manage your security. If you are offloading them to your operator, I'm not worried about it. I just wish you make sure that your operator is handling this part. So that would be what I have prepared for today. I'm not sure if I'm receiving your questions. If not, we have some. Oh, yes, now I'm receiving those. Thank you so much. So I will start dealing with the questions now. I really appreciate those. So I'll start by them in the order. Not sure why I have lost these and just receiving them all at once. But let's start with Nauman. Thanks, Nauman, for your question. So how these features on 5G networks would help when the networks should stay in hybrid mode for many years to come? Excellent questions. Well, if you're talking private networks and you're not relying on the MNOs that still have this kind of integrations, so the security features should help you a lot. But again, you have to test those. Okay, so if you have a pure 5G network, and when I say that, I'm saying a pure private networks nowadays, even the newest networks, they have at least 5G interfaces, 5G let's say open borders. So yes, I think if you do it right now for 5G, when time comes, you have a safer network. Okay, but you keep your guard all up and you keep monitoring for 2, 3, 4G forever. So the good part is that our suite, okay, I'm selling now, sorry about that, but our suite is, let's say, capable of dealing with all the generations, so and correlate between those. So you can see if someone is getting some information from 2G message and applying this knowledge, this earned knowledge to a 5G attack later on. Most common security attacks available for current 4G and 5G networks. Okay, for 4G, what I can tell you is that we have seen in our researches and in the regions we are in, we see a lot of interception for messaging, for data. We see a lot of denial of service focused on subscribers on 4G. So this I can assure you this happens. So I don't know why, but someone is targeting some of the 4G users to deny service for those. So if you are using a 4G, let's say, tracker to monitor some deliveries, some logistics, some trucks from point A to point B, and this access to the network gets denied, well, I can see a huge risk for this cargo in the middle of this transportation. Okay, so that's one possibility. How is the private network space growing? Oh, it's a good question. And will this result with public MNOs? Well, I see a lot of possibilities. Manakal, thanks for the question. What I've seen is that it depends on the country. So yes, it may happen that MNOs get less, let's say, business at some point, especially for when you don't need to have, let's say, mobility included, or your business is far from the current coverage of the MNOs. So someone has to invest, and some companies may be faster than the MNOs to provide those. So that's a possibility to someone to compete with the public MNOs. But again, it depends on the country. In some countries, you have no alternative of having your network fully private, so you'll be integrated with the 5G. Another question for Nauman. Customer premise, how telcos would be to protect that network? Okay, so I have seen some proposals already about 5G networks provided by telcos. So, well, about the radio part, if you decide to use a full virtual network on the MNO, based on the MNO, so it's easy to secure, let's say, for the MNO, because they control everything. If you have your own RAN, then you're right. It's not possible for the mobile network to protect you from that in that part. So you are on your own to protect your private radio network, and the MNO has to protect themselves from any issues that may happen in your network. Let's say someone on the enterprise network got invaded, got compromised somehow, and starting trying to connect to this to the MNO network. So MNO should in fact protect themselves from the enterprise network. Key security controls that would apply. Jagdeep question. Thanks, Jagdeep. What are the key security controls that would apply to 3 different go-to-market model I have mentioned? Okay. How do you address API-related attacks? Did not see any mention on your slides. Oh, smart question. Yes, I'll start on the first question. So about security controls, you always have to think either as the end customer, like as the enterprise, or as the MNO. So in the case of the first one, non-public network based on public network, you have to have huge controls on your signaling, on your transport, or encrypting. Let's say you don't encrypt the access network on all your network, on all the country. At least when you're providing this kind of access, I would say you should have it encrypted for the sake and the safety of your enterprise customers. So that being said, you must have controls to check this, to validate. Am I providing private networks in that sector? Okay. Can I show the, let's say, online time or the amount of time those links were encrypted? Can I present the number of attacks, signaling attacks my network has suffered, and the amount of those that has been already blocked on the origin? So those will be controls you must have internally. And as I see, at some point, you must externalize those, at least your enterprise customers. About API, I won't disclose anything in advance, but for sure, we are looking into this matter. We have some solutions, but not really, let's say, full API security solutions. So I'm not addressing this as, let's say, a product ready for every case this time, but just ask me. If you're a customer, just ask me if I can help you on your API exposure. Let's put it that way. Okay, I have another question from Omar Ralph. How will it affect if the 5G private 5G network is Open RAN, since we have more different vendors for hardware and software? Great question, Omar. I will leave that partially to the Open RAN webinar, which I hope we will be have in the coming months, maybe 3 months from now, as I see. That's the plan I have in mind. We have some experts covering that. But again, just to start addressing this, you have to take care of the full chain. So Open RAN, you have hardware vulnerabilities, you have virtualization vulnerabilities. We'll be talking that soon. I think next month we'll be talking about virtualization vulnerabilities, cloud vulnerabilities. So it's about the full service chain, and security should be, let's say, assured by the full service chain, right? So again, if you're buying it for someone else, please make sure they are giving you the desired level of security at the desired price. It's hard to balance, but again, it's how I see. Okay. Pradeep, thanks for the question. Does enterprise look for a black box solution, or they are open to implement multi-vendor solution, open source solution, provided it complies with the SLA? Okay, that depends a lot of the enterprise. What I have seen, let's say, as a small, medium business is out of the box. They are not dealing, they can't even deal with their IT, let's say, fully with their IT. So if you look at SMEs, small, medium enterprise today, they have a lot of, let's say, software as a service, a lot of cloud solutions, because they don't want and don't have ways of managing their IT parts. No, don't think about OT part. So it's out of the box for this segment. If we're talking about huge companies, mining, energy, whatever, I see more of a multi-vendor coming out of it because of the requirements. So out of the box, no matter the size of the company providing it. So I told you I won't be naming companies, but I'm naming companies again. But just to be clear on that. So you see that there are some, I see that from Amazon, for instance, they provide one solution for a private 5G, and they disclaim this is focused for SME. It's there, because they also provide solutions for bigger companies, and it's not the same because the requirements are totally different. So again, it's about scaling. So how to use telco technology, not being in a mobile network operator, not being part of this environment, is the hardest questions on those newcomers, new joiners, let's say. So I would say it's two ways, right? There are two ways people are dealing with this. So both solutions are valid. Again, depends on the size and the requirements. Let's go to that. Have we seen significant improvement using private networks within enterprise versus current wireline Wi-Fi based connectivity? Highly targeted 5G features by enterprise. Again, as I see, is about the low latency case which are not attainable by Wi-Fi today. And when you see agricultural way, is about that. I cannot cable agriculture. I cannot just put a cable in the huge machine and say, oh, don't stress the cable, please. There will be a cable guy going with you. So they need to be wireless. And Wi-Fi is not cutting this for them. Okay, so same for industries, some industries, same for mining. So those ultra low latency is good, but other than that, availability at any condition, assuring resources, no matter how crowded the network is, for the big truck that's coming across you. So let's say you're in a We have here in Brazil, I'm located in Brazil, we have a mining company called Vale do Rio Doce. And this company has autonomous huge trucks, like, I don't know, the amount of tons of the truck is already impressive. Maybe it's 5 tons just the truck, or 10 tons just the truck. And when it gets loaded, it's up to 30, 50 tons. I don't want to be on my mobile phone and have the same amounts of connectivity resources that the truck that's coming across me. I want the truck to be in better conditions. So this kind of segmentation of capabilities is not, let's say, well addressed in other networks. So this is one of the features we perceive the most as desired. Also about bandwidth, for sure, and about let's say manageability. So if you have been into a building which has Wi-Fi infrastructure, you always see the guy doing walk tests. Like it's usual. At some time of the day, you see someone with a lot of antennas and a notebook or a small palm device, small tablets walking around because someone is complaining, because they are getting not enough resources, etc. So about this, right? About manageability of the solution. Okay. But again, I'm not the, let's say, the biggest optimist that is to be. So those are use case. How much of those are really being effective or anything like that? We'll be seeing on the coming months and on the coming year, as I see. Okay, I know of some case. I cannot disclose them. I'm trying to, let's say, describe them the most, the better I can, without naming companies, etc. But those are the use case. Ooh, I got to the end of the questions. So if someone has any other, I'll be happy to try to address those. I'm not, let's say, that convinced, that strong that I say, okay, I can answer any questions, but I really appreciate the ones I have received today. And they are always good also to direction our next talks. So I see we are on the right track when I get open run questions, when I get, let's say, deeper cloud questions, because we are covering those in the near future. So if there are any other further questions, I'm happy to answer. Other than that, I would just thank everyone that's being a part of it. Really good to have a huge audience as this, and to have participation for sure. So that would be it. Thank you so a lot. Must I know how difficult it is to get a full hour out of your time these days, or even a half hour if you had to leave earlier or you have to join a little later. So really appreciate. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Thanks, guy. So if you want, someone wants to get, let's say, a heads up on the next webinars, etc., just connect with me on LinkedIn. ID is there. So I will always be posting about that and sharing this kind of opportunities. For those in Middle East, I've seen that are already at the end of the day. Have a nice evening. Everyone on the American side, have a good day of work ahead. And if you are in the middle of it, just enjoy the end of your work day. Thank you so much. Take care.